All right, all right, all right. We are back here again with AWS on air. Again, the official live streaming track here at reInvent 2020. We are all digital this year, but that doesn't mean that we can't have some exciting live content. Many of you are probably coming here from the recent partner keynote, and we'll be getting into that in just a second. But Rob, why don't we tell everyone a little bit about what we do here on the AWS On Air track?
Yeah, definitely. Well, like you said, AWS On Air is the live coverage of reInvent. You can find this, by the way, in the hamburger menu, and the link is good for the entire duration of reInvent. And what we try to do here is to provide customer deep dives. We have customers interviews, we have community voices, we have deep dives with folks from various service teams to take a close look at some of our new launches. And then, of course, we know that we have viewers from all over the world. Our customers are all over the world. And so we try and provide this kind of keynote worthy for a condensed version of what we cover in each of the keynotes. And then at the end of each day, we have the recap in a variety of different languages so that you can get a sense of what's been going on, and you can do that on your own time zone in your own language.
Exactly. And, again, this session immediately following the keynotes throughout the 3 weeks will be called Keynoteworthy, trying to make a digestible, quicker version of what was covered previously. Again, we won't be able to do it entirely justice, but for those that maybe missed part of it, or simply would like it in a condensed format, that's what we are here for. Additionally, we will get into some of the other amazing shows that we have. We have a packed day of content, but we'll get to that in the tail end of our 30-minute session here. But without further ado, Rob, as we said, this is keynote worthy, right? So we just saw the partner keynote led by Doug Yum, head of our global partner organization here at AWS. Again, this following the earlier keynote in the week from Andy Jassy, the longest one, the one with the most announcements. So this one looks a little bit different, but still some exciting things that he spoke about nonetheless.
Yeah, definitely. The partner keynote, and I mean, for those of you who've had the privilege to attend one of the in-person reInvents, you know that partner ecosystem is a critical part of both reInvent and of AWS. The way that works is, we talk about having the broadest and deepest set of tools, and we know that that comes with a certain level of expertise needed to successfully deploy them and migrate your workloads or innovate at speed. And really, we couldn't do this without our partner ecosystem. And so we had Doug, we had Sandy, we had Dave, 3 senior leaders in our organization kind of take us through how that all fits together. And really, what they talked about spanned a really broad spectrum. And I highly recommend that, after you watch our recap, that you go back and watch the entire keynote or bookmark the video on demand link, because what they talked about was really kind of the end-to-end workflow, right? AWS is not an island. It's not just a set of APIs for people to go and consume. While that is great for some kinds of people, really what we've learned over the years is that a lot of customers need more, much more than that, right? And so the partner ecosystem, it's right there, and it almost doesn't get enough attention that it is just such a critical part of how customers succeed on AWS.
Yeah, exactly. And much like the keynote earlier in the week, just because you use AWS or you're a developer or at an organization that uses AWS, that doesn't mean you may touch all of the different parts of your application stack. All of these launches may not seem particularly relevant to you or your use case. And again, we have partners and ISVs that are working in a multitude of different areas to serve their customers. And so, again, even if you are in the partner network, maybe everything in the keynote wasn't applicable, but we're going to do our best to try and pull out some of the highlights. Again, on this show, this is our own opinionated take on what stood out to us. But we'll try to make sure that all of the new offerings, new solutions, programs, these are things that Sandy dove a bit into. We will be servicing those here to the best of our ability. So without further ado, the first thing that we saw or the first deep dive, I'd say, in that keynote was the partner highlight for Cohesity. Cohesity is a data backup and management. They have a data backup and management offering, and they announced actually in that keynote today, data management as a service, a collaboration between Cohesity and AWS, in which they build this data management infrastructure on AWS. And so I think this is emblematic of the broader partner story, right? End users have different desires for what they want to be able to build or make possible from a tangible business value perspective. And oftentimes partners are able to come up with these opinionated ways to deliver these features through the underlying AWS services that we may not build ourselves, or that are solving customer needs that are unique, right? And so the ability to work closely with Cohesity and be customer obsessed for on behalf of their own customers as well was a really touching story to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Cohesity's story is incredible because the founder Mohit kind of bills it as a data management as a service, and I think it lives up to the name because when you look at what they're doing, they're really kind of taking care of the entire data lifecycle management, from backups to file and analytics to storage to access controls to migrations, to kind of weaving together all the different places and ways in which your data is stored. It's really quite a value added solution when you look at what it would take to build all this on top of disparate components, disparate pieces. It's not that you can't do it, it's just that it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of care and attention to detail to get done right. And in that sense, it almost to me resembles SageMaker for the data lifecycle, right? It's a single pane of glass where you can kind of see how your data is being managed, how it's being transformed, how it's being accessed, all in one pane of glass.
Yeah, exactly. And the Cohesity story, I feel like, does not stand on its own. This is does not need to stand on its own. This is an overwhelming trend of AWS being able to offer these sound foundational building blocks that ISVs and partners solve extremely pointed problems or even broad problems for their users. And you know, when working with these ISVs and partners, Doug talked a bit about sort of what this means tangibly beyond conversations, beyond relationships. At the end of the day, there are certain solutions that AWS can release and has released that enable and empower ISVs and partners to be able to more effectively build these tools for their end customers. So I believe examples of those being AppFlow, EventBridge, Data Link. Looking at EventBridge in particular, again, this was released, I think it was at the New York Summit last year, so not a very recent launch, but everything sort of comes downstream from that, right? AWS launches a service like EventBridge to be a custom event bus, and then ISVs and partners can build their own implementations on top of that, work in a cloud native way, event-driven architectures, and then have that bubble down to the features and platforms that they build for their end users. And again, similar story over at Data Link or for Data Link and AppFlow.
Yeah, and then let's give a shout out to one of the workhorses that makes a lot of this possible, which is VPC Direct Connect, right? This is something that we covered yesterday that we've heard Andy talk about at nearly every reInvent, because it's such a critical piece to enabling this kind of workflow. A lot of what these ISVs are doing is taking kind of enterprise workloads and really diving deep and understanding that it's a hybrid cloud situation. You often have customers who have legacy applications running on premise or in colos. You have them running across remote offices, data centers, and they're really just kind of in various stages of their cloud transformation and their cloud journey. And so there's at least an intermediate or transitionary step where the solution has to be hybrid. And VPC Direct Connect enables that. And that's one of the building blocks of solutions like Cohesity, and we can kind of connect the dots with some of the recent announcements that we've seen, right? With IoT Block Express, our SAN as a service just announced. And you can imagine, just you and I kind of talking through it, a reasonable next step would be to say, okay, well, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer who has a SAN on premise, what would it look like to take that workflow and migrate it to the cloud now that we have this kind of elasticity and on-demand capacity for SAN, which has never happened before, right? What does that migration workflow look like? How do you secure that in the process? And that consequently, that kind of brings me to one of the first points that Doug brought up in the keynote, which is that customers tell us the number one reason why they use AWS is for its speed and agility. And that's a really interesting part, right? Because Andy touched on this as well, saying that speed is everything, and speed is this constant force multiplier. It's not a linear, like you do it twice as fast and it's just twice as good. Actually, you do it twice as fast and there's nobody competing with you, right? So it's This is just a critical component of what makes AWS so powerful. But I want to call out that that's actually resting on an assumption, because moving quickly, like think about this, you wouldn't want to drive a really fast car that was not safe, right? And so what actually underpins speed and agility, I would assert, is that AWS has all the tools to do so securely. And and you don't have to ever get back into a corner where what you're doing is insecure. I mean, like, sure, moving quickly, sometimes you have to make trade-offs, but there's always the set of tools and principles and white papers and ISV partners who can help you analyze and make sure that what you're doing can be more secure, and how you implement that. So I think the speed and the agility on the foundation of what AWS provides as building blocks for building secure workflows is such a powerful story.
100%. I can't agree more. And, we heard throughout the rest of the keynote this underlying sentiment that it's rarely the case that organizations do not want to or don't identify the benefits of moving to cloud, or that they have not explored in some preliminary way the idea of it, but that there are very real and tangible challenges to being able to do so effectively. We've talked about these at length throughout all of the week, because this motivates some of the services that we launch. But here in the partner keynote, we see more than just technological solutions, because these aren't all technology challenges, right? We're talking about the ability to train up your employees to and your engineers and everyone throughout your organization to be well equipped to be able to use these new cloud native tools. We're talking about the peace of mind of moving from a set of skills and security, like you mentioned, to a new set of tools, and the fear in certain instances that it may not be able to suit those needs. Again, this is something that over time through education can be addressed. But there's other needs as well, right? Simply being able to have like a expert looking over your shoulder as you implement a new architecture to ensure that you're not wasting any time, right? This offered through support and professional services. And then lastly, physically, just resources, right? Experiments and being able to perform, like point of concept demos. They oftentimes require, either credits to be able to do so, and most importantly, the time needed to implement that, right? There are a multitude of challenges, and there were some really interesting launches here that I believe Doug and Sandy both announced. But let's go in chronological order. So the first one is going to be AWS SaaS Boost. So the goal of AWS SaaS Boost, to my understanding, is to serve as an open source SaaS reference environment to expedite companies that are looking to become ISVs, or if you are already an ISV, to be able to productionalize whatever application or API or software that you are looking to vend, so that you can go to market faster and do so with some of the best practices that other ISVs have been using, and that we at AWS can recommend to you. Again, don't reinvent the wheel. Don't face challenges that may have been faced before. And by offering this in a more productized way, accelerating this migration to becoming an ISV through AWS, through the partner network in the marketplace, is extremely exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think certainly these kinds of reference projects, these acceleration programs, they're great, but we've announced so much more than that, right? I mean, the set of features announced that Doug announced that I think are really closely linked, because they benefit from each other so much, are ISV Accelerate and ISV Partner Path. I mean, and what these two do is basically kind of give us a more tightly integrated relationship with ISVs, like you said, kind of either starting out or established ISVs, and we give them tighter access or broader access to our list of global sellers. We have new incentives for partnering with them. We have, like you said, more support and resources as they engage customers in these workflows. And I really kind of just like, before we move on from this topic, I think it's easy to talk about these, this kind of ecosystem in generalities. Let's take a step back for a moment. What this really means is, like, let's say you're an enterprise customer, you're a small and medium business, and you have workloads that can benefit from the various components of cloud computing. Like I said earlier, it takes a lot of specialized skills to do this. I mean, I don't think at this point it's any mystery that we launch a lot of new services, right? Doug alluded to the fact that we launched 27 new features and services just in the last day or so. And so, it's a lot of work to kind of make sure that you are using these services in the correct way and you are doing so securely, right? And these are often kind of competing trade-offs with moving quickly, getting to market, making sure that your migration is right, making sure that your app is modernized and delivering the customer experience that you want. And that's really where the ISV and our whole partner network comes in. There's so much work that just can't be done by documentation and APIs and remote learning lessons. Sometimes you just need an expert to come on site and walk you through the architecture, whiteboard things out with you, sit down next to your dev team and say like, okay, here, we're going to go through step by step. We're going to set up a least privilege IAM policy. This is the rule that we're going to use for dev. This is the rule that we're going to use for ops. And that is invaluable. It's not that you're training yourself to anything. It's that they're showing you, they've done this so many times that they now have economies of scale for how these best practices fit with any sort of business, right? That's really one of the things is that these partners are such experts at using AWS correctly and cost effectively and quickly that they really, like I said this earlier, it's not understanding. We can't do this work without them. They are, bar none, the most experienced users of AWS in a lot of cases, right? And they're the ones who can go in and have that really detailed cost discussion with you. But there's a spectrum, right? Which is like, let's say, contrast that with a solution architect who works at AWS. That person is going to be able to give you the bigger picture, right? That person is going to be able to help sit down with your C-suite and talk about the strategic enablement of what your business is trying to achieve on AWS. But it's really, we have to really see it as a continuous spectrum of services at different levels, different types of engagements, different periods of time. And the partner network fills out so many gaps there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really great segue. Next up, we saw Dave McCann, VP of AWS Migration, Marketplace, and Control Services. And a lot of these broad sweeping strokes that you're describing, he narrowed in a little bit on and actually had some launches that sort of make and empower ISVs and partners to be able to more effectively manage and have more agency over the relationships that they are then having with end customers. So really excited to get into each of those. But largely when we're talking about software modernization, Dave mentioned that at the CIO level, we're talking about business capabilities. Those are oftentimes what matter most there. But then in the CSO suite for security, they're most concerned about what apps are in use, what is our security profile, how can we consistently audit this, and it's really easy to see scenarios in which this can be done ineffectively, right? It can be easy to be fearful and drastically lock down and slow down through very long approval processes, the ability and audits, the ability to implement new architectures or adopting new technologies. And then on the other side, if you sort of loosen the reins and you move too quickly, well, you're often going to be concerned about what you might be letting through. But again, if working with these ISVs and partners that are experts in working with them, we want to enable customers and those ISVs the ability to do so in the most secure ways possible without having to leave any loose threads. Before we get into the new launches in particular, first a call out to the 200 new ISVs in the marketplace. Those include Infor, Apt.io, Cohesity, Okta in the identity space, and Confluent in the forward managed Kafka. Sorry, I think these might be premier ISVs in the marketplace. I may have taken down some slightly shorthanded notes there, but again, a big shout out to all of those ISVs in the marketplace. First in the launches that Doug mentioned is managed entitlements for the AWS marketplace. So essentially what managed entitlements offer are a way to automate third-party software license distribution and simplifying the entitlement tracking process. We have heard from customers, and many ISVs have heard from customers that tracking licenses can be difficult. Now, in AWS world, we have AWS License Manager, but having ISVs needing to independently track and manage those licenses on behalf of their own customers is simply some added friction and extra steps to this governance model. So what managed entitlements offer is the ability to tightly integrate this with AWS License Manager so that you can sort of keep these all within a single pane of glass and from a government's perspective. Simplification, automation of this, and one of the best parts that I think is that this launches with over 7,000 products that it's integrated with on the marketplace today. So if you are using an ISV or a partner to be able to manage licenses, or if you are an ISV or a partner managing licenses, this launch is probably something that will drastically simplify the governance of these licenses for your customers.
Yeah, and not to mention that this is kind of a success loop, right? Because we worked with a countless variety of different licenses, licenses that span on-prem workloads versus cloud-based workloads, licenses that operate by volume or by logical cores. Uh, and what this does is kind of give you access to not only the tools to manage the licenses, but also just example licenses that have worked for other kinds of workflows, right? It's great to have this, it's just like a legal document. You don't necessarily want to start from scratch if you're dealing with like a deed transfer or a will or something like that. There are templates that really save you a lot of time and make sure that you're not falling into any traps, and that's the same case here.
Exactly. And one final note on managed entitlements, it is effective for both AWS and on-prem licenses that are being managed. So again, no need to have a separate system for your off AWS licenses. You can centralize those with managed entitlements for AWS Marketplace. Really quick, Rob, before you go in, I know that we only have 10 minutes left and we will not be able to dive extremely deeply on each of the launches that was announced here. We'll try our best to get through it. We have some other content coming up right at the half-hour mark. So we will be sure that we finish in time for them. But without further ado, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's just one last section here that I wanted to call out, and this is tightly related to the managed entitlements that you just talked about. And this is professional services in AWS Marketplace. And now, just for some context, what customers have always been able to do, always, I mean, for a few years since Marketplace has been operating, is that they've been able to go in there and procure some of these solutions from our partners, right? So, for example, we mentioned Okta. They can basically deploy Okta services. They can deploy, Confluent services. They can deploy services from New Relic right from the marketplace. And what they get is this kind of tried and tested solution for how it integrates with various AWS services, and then they get that vendor's solution, and they get the best of both worlds in some sense. But one thing that's been missing and customers have been asking for from the marketplace is the ability to buy professional services right there. And we're not just talking about the software that operates as a service. We're talking about the actual consulting services that we mentioned earlier, right? So how do you buy a contract in which you bring a partner on board to work to sit side by side with you for 6 months and vet your architecture, for example, or how do you do a cost optimization exercise? These are services that we are now starting to integrate with the AWS Marketplace, and we have over 100 launch partners from ProServe. And for example, this includes CompuCenter, Rackspace, GatePoint, etc. So this is a huge step forward for AWS Marketplace, and it should streamline the workflow for not only finding the services, but finding the professional support that will help you succeed with those services.
Yeah, exactly. The services or the software and the services that go along with them are quite literally hand in hand. So being able to consolidate the access point for customers and the management side of that for ISVs and partners, consolidate billing, it's just a win-win for everybody involved. Wonderful. Well, we have next up, I know there are some other highlighted ISVs and partners that we saw that we won't be able to get to, but I wanted to get to some of the things that Sandy Carter, VP of Global Public Sector Partners and Programs, spoke about. Sandy broke down that there are 3 core areas of differentiation for what AWS can provide to public sector and to partners. Those are programs, solutions, and competencies. Flying through each of those in the program space, partners have spoken to us and said that there are a lot of things that AWS can provide to make their effectiveness greater. And that's why we're really happy to announce today that the ATO on AWS program, Authority to Operate, will enable ISVs and partners to reduce the time to compliance by providing best practices and being able to operate on behalf of the end users of their services. Essentially, we are seeing in the road to compliance, the road to migration for, let's say FedRAMP, that was the example that Sandy gave. we have worked extensively with partners and ISVs and their end customers to achieve FedRAMP compliance, even so much that I believe AWS has 3 times more FedRAMP authorizations than Azure and GCP combined. An interesting stat, but I think that extensive experience by talking to customers has enabled us through the ATO on AWS program now to be able to expedite the ability for ISVs and partners to reduce this TTC, time to compliance, get it as low as possible. And that's the exact game that some of our ISVs and partners are in. So happy to help provide that value through this new program.
Yeah, and the second core area that you mentioned for a core competency is solutions. And here, Sandy talked about the need for secure solutions. And it should come as no surprise that security is a repeating theme here at reInvent, because this is really the one thing that every single customer tells us matters, right? And here, what we see is Sandy kind of highlighting the partner design offerings and how they are kind of designed from the ground up to make sure that you're operating in a secure way. And this is going to save you a lot of time. There's this kind of saying that security is not something that you can retrofit, and there's a lot of truth to it, because you really want to understand the boundaries that you're working with. Security, one of the technical terms for it is it's a non-functional requirement. But that almost sounds like it's less important. It's not at all. Non-functional requirement means that you actually need to sometimes even do even more work to make sure that you're going to be able to achieve that non-functional requirement, because it is so difficult to retrofit.
Yeah, exactly. And leaving it, to your point, leaving it as an afterthought is often more costly than doing the hard work to design effectively from the beginning. And we know that a lot of ISVs and partners are doing exactly that for companies that want to have these secure migrations and transformations. We saw Accenture with Data Lake Accelerator, accelerating time to completion with AWS, Deloitte with their Kinetic Finance startup offering an embedded AI solution, and IBM with SAP's next gen managed cloud solution NS2, being able to securely deploy HANA workloads on AWS. So again, sort of ISVs and partners acting as a force multiplier, solving pointed problems for customers. And here upstream at AWS, we are thrilled to be able to offer these solutions to empower them to then help their own customers themselves. Third, there were some launches in the competency space. We understand that, I mentioned before that knowledge is extremely important for being able to knowledge and certification are critical to being able to perform any of these transformations or guide their end customers. So we saw launches in the public safety and disaster response competency, the AWS energy competency, and the newly formed AWS travel and hospitality competency. So again, these are areas that we've worked closely with customers on. We have come to learn deeply the needs and concerns of providing solutions in that space, and we're now happy to offer these new formalized competencies to a large number of launch partners that unfortunately I can't show up on the screen. Andy had quite a large list though. Or sorry, that was Sandy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's no surprise that we have a lot of partnerships partners that we've been working with for a long time now, and these span every industry vertical, and they've given us some really good insights into how this unique kinds of problems facing customers in each one of these industries. I think we are running low on time here, Nick. We should definitely switch over to giving the viewers a preview of what's in store for AWS On Air today.
Exactly. That sounds good to me. So here we are looking at the AWS On Air schedule. This is on the AWS News blog. Unfortunately, I can't provide a link very easily here, but if you search for this title, you'll be able to find it. We have got a jam-packed day ahead of us. We are just concluding Keynoteworthy right here. And up next, we will have AWS What's Next, a show where we dive deep with service teams that have recently launched services and features here at reInvent. We've got Contact Lens Real Time and Amazon Connect. Following that, we'll have Community Voices, a roundtable with community heroes and other esteemed AWS experts. We'll take a quick break for lunch until getting into some more AWS What's Next sessions. Again, these are services and features that have been launched as recently as Andy's keynote just 2 days ago. So DevOps Guru, look out for Vision. We have some industry roundups here for both healthcare, travel and hospitality, and media and entertainment later on in the evening. And we've got some other exciting content to round out the day in how to partner with Cohesity, again, mentioned in Doug's Partner Keynote. IoT All the Things, Special Projects Edition, and AWS What's Next for Amazon Connect customer profiles. Again, Amazon Connect being our managed call center as a service. We have a yet to be named service or feature on here. And then we will have a weekly recap in English for everything that we have spoken about on air and everything that has happened here in week 1 of reInvent. If English is not your jam, or you're looking for content in your localized time zone or different language, we will have a multitude of recaps. We are running these every single day for the 3 weeks of reInvent in Japanese, Korean, Italian, German, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. So be on the lookout for each of those.
Yeah, that is a packed lineup, and what a way to close out the week. I hope you have you're excited about this lineup as I am. And as always, this is AWS On Air. We also have the session catalog with lots of new content launching and free for you to explore.
Wonderful. Well, we are at about time. I'm hearing in my ear from the producer that the What's Next session talking about Contact Lens Real Time and Amazon Connect Wisdom are ready to go. So we are going to go to a quick break, and in just a minute, we'll be right back to see those services hands-on. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you shortly.